I'm Agnelo Fernandes, and you're listening to Sweet Success.
You've just checked in to Sweet Success. Join me, Katie Cline, for exclusive conversations with hotel executives, hospitality leaders, and industry innovators. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and techniques these masters of hospitality relentlessly refine. Whether you're already in the industry or just starting out, tune in every week to unlock the secret to your sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sweet Success. I'm your host, Katie Cline, and today I'm really excited to welcome Agnelo Fernandes to the show. Agnelo is the CEO of Cote Hospitality, a multifaceted organization that specializes in resort operations, outdoor hospitality, real estate, and development services. Prior to joining Cote, Agnelo held several senior executive roles at renowned companies including Canyon Ranch, Coral Tree Hospitality's Terranea Resort, and Sonesta Hotels International. He is a dedicated mentor and an active volunteer with various professional and cultural organizations. Agnelo, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here today. And first of all, congratulations on all your success. And most importantly, I want to express my gratitude for having me on today.
That's so kind. I'm so excited to have you here. I feel like you have such an incredible career in the hospitality industry, which is why I just want to dive in from the very beginning. What was it that attracted you to our amazing industry in the first place?
Well, for me, it was really having that heart for service and a passion for experiences that really mattered to our guests and our associates. For me, hospitality, I think the first time I really got what the concept meant was when I heard the quote by Maya Angelou where she said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I've always believed that hospitality is about creating those experiences, making people feel a certain transformative way that lasts far beyond that moment. It's really about making people feel seen, heard, and valued. And that's really been in my DNA. And so, it felt good because I actually came from the finance industry. After working there for about 10 months, realized that wasn't really my calling or my passion. And also had a degree in marketing. So I said, well, let me explore other avenues. And like most folks in hospitality, I landed in the industry pretty much by accident and then have made the most of it.
That's amazing. I'm sure your finance background is serving you well now in your current role.
It does. It does. It enables me to sort of balance my right brain, which is really most times what I sort of defer to, but then it also helps me balance with some of the black and white versus just the gray matter. And so I tend to find myself, in a good and feeling confident about the decisions I make, the steps that I take, and ultimately, the results come as a result of that a balanced mindset.
Yeah, you're looking at the picture holistically, because I think, like you talked about with that Maya Angelou quote, it is so much about how we make people feel, and that is
Absolutely.
Full gray area, right? But we don't have a business if our books aren't in line. So I think you really need that push-pull that it seems like you so effortlessly have.
Yeah, I think, as the way I look at it, and my role sits at that intersection of strategy and soul, if you will. And you're supposed to drive performance, right? But at the same time, you have to foster a culture of that's rooted in purpose, in service, and storytelling. And so, for me, my day gets really exciting, especially when I've got to sort of think about it holistically and say, well, what game-changing moves can we make today? Whose day do we make, and how do we continue being the best at what we do? And so that really fuels my day and really the role that I play.
And speaking of game-changing moves, I'm really excited to learn more about Cote Hospitality today. Can you tell me a bit about the company and your overall vision for it?
Sure. Cote has had a timeless reputation, and it's really blended with a tradition of excellence in hospitality and service. Today, so it is a 100-year-old company, but today it's evolved very differently. It's blended with innovative leadership. It's blended with fun things that we're looking at in terms of just not today, but also future-proofing ourselves. Thinking about what's next. It's just not about guest service in its traditional form, but what else aids that guest service, and what actually is the reason we're moving in that direction. So today, our brand strategy ensures that each property of ours maintains this unique identity while staying true to the overarching brand promise of delivering exceptional services. And whether it's Grandview Lodge or Tanque Verde Ranch or our historic summer camps, we really stay committed to fostering, the philosophy of adventure, relaxation, and above all, meaningful connections. So, as I've sort of taken, the role at the helm of this organization, it was just about restructuring what our culture looks like today, restructuring what strategy looks like in terms of our priorities, and then ultimately ensuring that we have this setup where performance happens as a result of taking care of our people, hiring the right people to begin with, and setting this culture where everybody's allowed to do and be the best version of themselves. Then we also focus on our brand development and how do we drive commercial success. We focus on innovation and operational efficiencies and ultimately service experience. And then, for a small company, I'm a big proponent of staying relevant in at all levels of technology, whether it's guest facing, associate facing, whether it's distribution channels. And really all of that today, for me, leads to the desired levels of performance and results. So, it's been a phenomenal journey for me, taking over this role and resetting the organization, but it's, from its strategy to its core values to ultimately defining who we're going to be down the road.
100 years is just an absolutely incredible milestone. But then, like you said, you're looking at future proofing the business as well. So, how do you see guest expectations shifting? And maybe it's from the inception of the company to now, but then also looking to the future as well.
Sure. For me, I think what's happening is that we're seeing today at maybe the highest level that I've seen it in my 30 plus years in the industry, where the guests are expecting less of the transactional, and more of that emotional connection, and above all, authenticity. Right? There's this concept of personalization and purpose-driven travel, and it really stems from the fact that we've got to start thinking about why a guest chooses Cote Hospitality, not just the what is in it for them, but the why behind it. And so, it kind of ties to our vision of enriching lives, right? Because again, the guest is not just looking for a regular check-in or a regular checkout or just a bed in the room. They are looking for experiences along each point in their journey. So, as you think about the guest journey, we've identified 10 different points where we can make a significant difference from the time they discover us to the time that they check out, and then ultimately we want to build that stickiness or that loyalty factor. So they're expecting that there is a surprise and delight incident at pretty much every point, right? But if you can consider that we've got 10 points in place, and if we can do just 3 or 4 of them in the most meaningful way, keeping it real, keeping it as locally infused as possible, and most importantly, making it purpose-driven, I think that's where, their mindset is today. And then the other piece of it is the information, is how do we become more discoverable? And a lot of times you'll find that in our industry, amazing properties, amazing experiences, amazing content being put behind it, but we're not discoverable, right? And so today, with the advent of AI, what are those things that we could be doing, in order to make sure that we're placed strategically to be discovered right at the beginning of that journey? Because as it starts getting to that point where people used to search with keywords to now the sort of the long tail search, pretty soon it's going to be the first thing that they see. It better be it better be our information, whether it's our website or a blog or a social post. If not, we will lose them. So it's really getting to that level of connecting with them in a very authentic manner and making it less about transaction.
You all know that creating a strong brand is about so much more than just a logo or a color palette. It defines who you are to your guest. That's why I love working with Lodgify. Their platform helps short-term rental hosts and boutique hotel operators put their brand front and center. Customize a direct booking website that looks and feels like you, not just another cookie cutter listing. Plus, Lodgify makes it easy to centralize your business needs, managing guest communication, bookings, listing updates, and more, all in one place. From now until the end of September, Lodgify is offering up to 45% off their yearly and bi-yearly professional and ultimate plans. Visit Lodgify.com and use code SWEETVIP, that's SWEET, SUITE VIP, to take advantage of this incredible offer. So going back to what you said earlier, those 10 different points, are you able to walk us through what those 10 different points are?
Sure, without really counting it, but it's really about this time where guests are exploring Cote Hospitality to the time that they actually discover us. Then they do their research, and during that research phase, they're going back and forth between other websites, third-party websites. They're referring to blogs, they're referring to surveys and feedback on the reputation front. Then they have a choice to make. How do we book, right? And so then they then go to, hopefully our website is where we drive most of our business, and then they book their stay. From there, once the confirmation is generated, we then trigger what is called the pre-arrival stage. And at that pre-arrival stage, we want to make sure we're connecting with our guests and understanding their preferences, especially if they're new guests. And at the same time, taking that as an opportunity to let them partake in some of our experiences. Then you have the point where they actually check in, which is probably the most significant moment, because that's the moment of truth when they actually come in and see the property. What is that sense of arrival? Was I welcome in a ways that touched my heart and made me connect with you right at go? To the stay, and the stay encompasses so many different experiences, whether it's spa or a horseback ride, or just taking one of our classes and wellness. Then it's the checkout time, right? Because that's another point where many a times our industry will fail because the billing is not right. The lines are too long. There's always a mess up here or there. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. And then from there, you have a point where you do a post survey. From post survey to where you then end up, making them your advocates for life, hopefully, and then that turns into the cycle of them driving word of mouth to others. So you have about 10 points that you can make a difference at, and we typically tend to focus on the how we get discovered, number one, to the pre-booking stage, to, of course, the sense of arrival and the sense of departure. So we try and make the best of those points.
Yeah, I love how you're thinking about it holistically, in the sense of usually you have that marketing funnel of how do we attract and get people to book. And then you have people thinking about how do we make sure the stay is great. And then you have people thinking about how do we get them to book again.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like you're really thinking about this as one journey, which to the guest it is.
It is. And they don't really care. I mean, we keep, in our industry, we keep harping about why third parties do as well as they do. Well, they're able to tell my story in a few pictures in one page. But yet I'll go spending, 200 and 300 pages trying to tell everybody what I am about. And I feel that there's a better way of doing that. And I think, with AI, everything's becoming a democracy, right? It's democratized everything. It's level playing platform. We have the option to change the game. And that's what I'm focused on, is how do I leverage that component and the AI component in every touch point of the guest journey. But I also, spend a lot of time, Katie, thinking about thinking about what does that mean for our associate experience? Because in my words, the EX part of it, the experience side of it, equals the AX, which is really the associate experience side of it. So we also have mapped out a journey for our associates. What does that look like from the time they have found out about us? Do we make that first impression the right way? Do we hire right? Do we, of course, do we recruit right? Do we hire the best and the brightest? Then do we develop them and show them that they're valued by letting them engage? And I spent, in my mind, I think one of the biggest frustrations that I have, and not just now, but as an executive growing, and it was instilled in me very early on, the concept of I versus we, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're able to sort of slide to that we become more powerful. But I find that a lot of times I'll hear this all the time. Well, I wanted to do this, or this is my accomplishment or my achievement. And I'm like, no, it's not. You weren't able to do this without the rest of us. And so, for me, I think it's that, when you think about journeys, it's not just one dimensional. It's also the associate journey that matters the most. And that ultimately you hire the right people, you build the right culture.
I think it was Richard Branson who said something very similar to what you're saying about how associates talk about their job. And he was saying, if you ask them a question about something they've done or something that the hotel has done, are they responding and saying they, or are they responding and saying we? And it's such a telling thing. And I've been in roles in different positions throughout my career, and I hear myself doing it based on how engaged I am. And what I'm loving that I'm hearing you say too is utilizing AI for the employee experience as much as for generating the revenue for the hotels. I think we are talking a lot about AI in terms of our industry and what that means. I think the narrative is shifting away from robots are coming to take our jobs, thankfully. But AI is a great example of shifting consumer expectations. I'll use an example for myself. I use ChatGPT a lot, and I don't know when the shift happened from me being really blown away that AI existed in my life to being frustrated when ChatGPT doesn't give me the perfect answer or doesn't understand my question appropriately. But it happened like that, just like guest expectations shift in our world as well. So I'm interested in hearing more about the ways that you're using AI for your employees and not just, all the ways that our industry is currently using it to attract more guests.
Oh, absolutely. I think, it's interesting when you mentioned that you get frustrated when ChatGPT does not give you the perfect answer, right? And I just came off a innovation forum by one of our strategic partners, Milestone, based out of San Jose. And, we talked a lot about prompt engineering, right? It's asking, it's just like the basics of leadership. If you want the best answer, you ask the right questions. And it's the same thing with prompt engineering. It's you've got to think about the response that I'm getting. What does that framework look like? And so I'll share with you separately some of the tips that we found. And again, this is all home cooked, but it's been fairly effective. And I use ChatGPT. I do use Gemini, Claude, and Perplexity to sort of get me through. Because I think it's all about these platforms learning more and more about you. So in terms of how we use it here, informally, it started out where we were just playing with the system, right? But today, it's evolved to how do we write job profiles and job descriptions? And that's one side of it. The other side of it is when you think about organizational design, I use AI very much not to give me the answers, but to drive inspiration and thoughts that actually then allow me to calibrate everything that's out there as an option and a potential, and then make those decisions. Because I still believe very firmly that the right decision is going to come from me and not necessarily, any AI platform. It'll give me inspiration. It'll give me, thoughts and prompt additional thinking, and maybe my decision gets delayed over the weekend, but that's how I leverage it. And so now it's evolved to, we were just hiring for a senior leadership position in marketing recently. And so, as you think about it, you take your job profile or job description that you have posted, you take the person's resume, you take their predictive index, which is a behavioral evaluation, and then you copy and paste their LinkedIn into any of the platforms and say, act as an expert and, create a framework of questions that I should be asking this executive. You don't even have to say functional, behavioral, none of that stuff. All platforms actually spit out probably the best killer questions you could ever interview somebody with. And I started adopting this about a little over a year ago. And one of the things that it prompted me was, don't hire somebody, no matter how much experience they have, if they're not, savvy with technology. And so now I'll ask stupid questions like, talk to me about your skills in Excel. Talk to me about your skills in PowerPoint. And I know that may be a basic question, but if you don't understand that part of it, I'm pretty much done for, because now I've got to hire somebody else to do some of those things. So when you ask those questions, you can it actually enables you to form that framework to say, gosh, based on the job profile that I've put out there, based on this person's experience, the way they behave, and ultimately what they say about themselves on a public domain like LinkedIn, I've got the four corners covered. So now it's time to just make that assessment if this person is being authentic. Are they true to themselves? Number one, do they conform to our core values? It starts with integrity to empowerment. Do they fit that mold? Because we don't hire for if you're not we hire based on our cultural norms versus just hiring somebody for being an expert in a certain field, because it's not it's common knowledge that you can fudge your way through. But now it's made it very difficult, because the follow-up questions are such that it zero ins on things that you really want to drive out of these individuals, right? Because it's funny. One of my bosses once said, you hire the right people and 80% of your job's done, and you hire the wrong people and you just flip that around. So it's kind of that 80-20 Pareto's principle that flips around if you don't do your homework while hiring.
And it goes back to what you said earlier too, about at the end of the day, you are the one who's making the decision. You didn't put in all of those four corners and say to AI, who should I hire?
Sure.
You said, how can I ask them better interview questions to really kind of see if they're maybe BSing their way through their LinkedIn profile, which a lot of people are very good at, or are they actually able to do the job and bring something to the organization?
Yeah, I still believe that the ultimate decision as a leader has to come from me, and I have to be convicted in the way I process the decision, right? Some of them are bold decisions, some of them are basic decisions. But regardless, they have to be data-based. They have to have a certain feel for me, because I'm about the energy. I'm about the collaboration piece of it. And if it doesn't jive, and I listen to cues, the one of the reasons I selected one of the leaders in a critical position over the other is because of their ability to talk in a collaborative fashion, right? It's like, so when you say, talk to me about your personal successes, all the successes were tied to how somebody aided that success, whether it was in a small way or a large, in a bigger setting, whether it was team spirit. There was not one iota of, this is what I did. And I was like, wow, this is exactly what I need to continue to build our culture. So one more thing that I'd like to address is when you talk about, the use of AI, you can think of something like your competitive set, right? Back in the day, we would go on every website and, and then look at your star reports and, other intelligence reports. Yep. I mean, just a quick tip, you put it in on your AI platform, here are my competitors, right? Here's my value proposition. And we have our value proposition defined, because as a brand, you want to make sure that you know what you stand for. And then you put in your potential competitors, not just direct competitors, but aspirational competitors, and ask AI to generate a clear cut framework to how do you look at the market conditions and what is happening specifically in that subset of your competitors that matters to you. And again, it's all in the prompt engineering, and you ask them things that you want, and you're more than likely to get the right answers.
Such good suggestions. And I think this is where, again, we're not looking at AI to come in and clean the rooms and check people in and do the kind of human elements of it, but we're making ourselves smarter, faster, and using it as a brainstorming buddy. That's definitely how I look at it as well.
Excellent.
I understand for you that mentorship is super important to you personally. Why is that?
Well, as I grew up in my career, I didn't necessarily have the right, I would say, the right circle of trust, right? And I don't blame that on anybody else but myself. I wasn't about networking. I was more reliant on my own instincts. I've always been that way. I want to control my narrative. I want to control my destiny as best as I can. And but what I found was, as I started to mature into my late 20s, that your network's your currency. And it came about because one of my bosses at that point was, well, let's go out to this event in the evening. I was like, I'm ready to go and practice soccer. I don't have time for this stuff. And it happened to be in South Florida, and it happened to be a very rainy day. And I was like, okay, practice has been canceled. Let's go. And I found myself, rubbing shoulders against some very inspirational folks that had a lot of great advice. And as long as you look them in the eye and you ask questions that mattered, and you understood their background and appreciated who they were and how they got to that point, all of a sudden the feedback just kept flowing. And then so that was one lesson. But then, of course, I did not follow up. And so life takes over, right? At 27, life takes over. So fast forward a couple of years later, I run into these folks again, and I'm a little bit embarrassed because they connected and said, hey, it was nice to meet you. And I didn't even bother.
Right.
And so those folks, I became my first circle because I made it a point to connect with them, because what I found was in mentorship, it's about that. If you aspire to be the best that you can be, you've got to learn from the best around you. And that doesn't mean they're necessarily the best in the industry, but they're the best of who you can have access to. Then it's up to you to sort of take that inspiration and drive it further and develop yourself through them or through self-development. And I adopted that. And so as I look at it, for me, I think as the person that leads this organization, I think, when I think about the AX part of the equation, right, the associate experience, I want to give our team the best chance at success. And so, we've incorporated a program that I'll talk about in a second that enables us to, help these folks grow at their own pace. And it's structured to the point where there's a framework, but it's not structured to the life lessons that a mentor can actually share with a mentee. And I've always found that as a mentor, I learn more than the mentee or whoever asks for advice. When I tell them that, they don't believe it, but when I hear myself speak, it enables me to think about. I always walk away with something, that has changed my perspective or changed my mind. And I promise you that's going to happen after this conversation too, because if your heart and soul is into the mentorship, which could be formal or informal through a basic conversation, then you're going to make the most of it. And ultimately, you will form a perspective. And that's what life is about, in my opinion. Yeah. If you have a perspective, you can have a seat at any table because you have now thought about things, you've heard about things from other experts, you've digested that, processed it, and now whatever comes out of it is with more conviction. And you know what? In every conversation, like Nelson Mandela said, you either win or you learn. And so if you have that perspective, you're going to continue growing. And that's why we created this mentorship program.
The next time you're traveling or celebrating an important occasion, book a Flytographer photo shoot. They make it easy to capture memories by connecting you with hand-picked professional photographers in over 350 destinations around the world. I should know. Capturing memories with family and friends is super important to me, and I've booked Flytographers from Maine to Paris to London. A Flytographer shoot is an essential part of every trip I plan. They also have an incredible affiliate and travel advisor program. Add a photo shoot to your customer's next itinerary and earn 10% commission. Visit flytographer.com/sweet success for $25 off your first shoot or to sign up as an affiliate or travel advisor. That's FLYTOGRAPHER.com/sweet, like hotel suite success. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I want to get back to the mentorship program very shortly. But Julie Frank, who's the vice president of design for Aspen Hospitality, she was a guest on this show. And she was talking about very similar to what you said in terms of you also learning from the mentees. She was talking about herself as a 20-something. And she's like, I had so much confidence and I just thought I can do anything. I can figure anything out, that sometimes she's almost looking back to that 20-something version of herself to bring that into her life. So I could see how having conversations with people that, even though you are in the leadership position, you are mentoring them, and they are by no means, I'm sure, learning so much from you, you're also taking things away from them. And I'm curious, if you think about that late 20-something version of Agnelo, would you say you were an introvert or an extrovert?
I started out as an introvert. I think with most people that become extroverts down the road, it's more because I've always been of that curious mindset. But I think in my younger days, I was more afraid to fail than I am today. And it was always about, if I said this, I'm going to look stupid or sound stupid, right?
Yeah.
And that apprehension's gone away, and it went away, at different points in my life. Whether it was, captaining a soccer team or leading a project management team or being selected at a very young age to lead a special project with a blue chip finance company. It didn't matter. It just, your confidence grows as long as you allow your authentic self to come out and you uncover the soul of your own brand, right? And so, as I call it, and to me, once I got past that phase of, I don't care what the world thinks, it's up to me to define my brand, to be self-aware, to be, compassionate, and to be relatable to people, stay relevant, and most importantly, be consistent. I hope that I'm able to instill that, Agnelo Fernandes, the brand, is consistent across the board. Of course, when we're having fun and a social conversation, there's a sub-brand that comes out that's always fun and jovial and wants to play pranks. But then when there's the time to make a serious business decision, then, hey, flip the switch. But at the same, the platform's always the same. It's always going to be authentic. It's going to be what's on my mind, and I'm going to share it in a very respectful and non-condescending way, and ultimately see collaboration. And so that's how I hope I'm perceived, and I think that's the way I'm perceived. So hopefully that's right.
Yeah, I think that authenticity is so hard when we're younger because we have been programmed from so many different areas and ways. And the reason I was interested in asking you about introvert versus extrovert is because I always thought I am this extroverted person. I grew up dancing. I loved being on stage. And it was only further into my career, maybe late 20s, early 30s, where we were doing some type of corporate personality testing thing. And I learned really for the first time that being an introvert or an extrovert was about how you replenish your energy. Mm-hmm. And I had this sudden aha moment of, I'm an introvert who's been masquerading as an extrovert for my entire career. And I don't think that's uncommon. And I think a lot of us maybe see extrovert as a good thing and introvert as a bad thing, but that's by no means the case. And what I love about what you're talking about with the mentorship program, which I know is called Guide. And as you said, it's a formal 6-month mentorship program that you guys have created. What you're doing is allowing space for the younger associates to not be afraid of failure, like a lot of us were when we were early in our careers.
Absolutely. And, it's just to wrap up one more thought based on what you said about being an extrovert or an introvert. I think being more of an introvert in my early years has enabled me to sort of adapt to the situation. If I need to network a room, I'm all over the place. And there are some rooms that I sense it may not be worth the energy to get into it because it's not the right time. Not that it's bad or any of that stuff. It's just not the right time. And so I know how to sort of move myself out of the picture and not wanting to connect with everybody and anybody in that room. So, but I think the adaptability function could be something that you're blessed with also in terms of saying it's time to turn it on and it's time to turn it off right now.
Yeah.
So going back to Guide, right? And, and I told you the inspiration behind it. It's really to give our associates that opportunity to be the best versions of themselves. And it really is about helping them, again, going back to the concept that I was talking about, is that self-awareness, that and building a personal brand that is consistent. Because, all said and done, yes, we show up to work, we bring in energy, we bring in joy, we bring in passion, but you have to have a personal brand that stands for something. And so, Guide, which is the acronym for grow, understand, inspire, develop, and enrich. And all we are talking about is tying back to our vision of enriching lives. We talk about the concept. It's just not for one person or one community. We're talking about enriching the lives of our associates, to begin with, our guests, and ultimately our stakeholders and our investor group, right? And so as long as we're able to make each and every interaction count, then we've got it dialed in. So in Grow, we provide an opportunity for our mentees to connect with mentors that, and they may not be of the same grain, right? They could be coming from different backgrounds, but the process enables us to look at their behavioral patterns, to look at their resume, to look at the letter that they write, asking us for consideration and to guide. And then we handpick the mentors with the mentees. And so they get the ability to hear of different perspectives and expand their skills. The second piece is, really understanding, we understand who the high potential associates are, who are our rock stars, who raises their hand to do above and beyond, right? So I'm keenly observing that, as is my chief people officer, American resident. And the way we are selecting people is based on the fact that, you could be a superstar and not raise your hand. That's on you. We're not necessarily going to force you to do it, but it also shows that you're a superstar and you're not raising your hand. So that's something that, we'll say, okay, in the future, this is how we kind of perceive this person's behavior in the real world. And so this is an opportunity for folks to sort of, develop themselves as servant leaders to give back in a meaningful way. And when we talk about, inspiring folks, right? We want people to sort of, we want to create leaders that inspire others and create more leaders. And so to that effect, anything that we can do through sharing experiences or, things that they've read about or things that they've heard about at a conference or a keynote speaker, bring that to the table, because those stories, inspiration comes through, honestly, people telling awesome, authentic stories, right? So that to me is really critical. And then that in turn automatically leads to a level of development. And again, our goal is to develop not just rock stars, but servant leaders who inspire more leaders to be formed. And then, that all of that comes together, then we are enriching the lives of people. So it really is a great program for younger folks to create a personal brand, know what it stands for, and ultimately growing leadership within is growing the brand. And because ultimately brand is all about the people and the promises we make.
Yeah. It was in 2023 that you became CEO of the company. And I'm curious for you, what was the biggest mindset shift that you had to personally make when you took on this new role?
Well, for a very long time, my world was a lot about executing. And then, about 7 years ago, I'm maybe a little over that, moved into more of a strategy role, which is something that I have a natural affinity for. I enjoy socializing ideas and thoughts. I enjoy, sharing of stories and drawing from each other's energy. And for me, the mindset was, uh, what needs to be done to, who needs to be inspired to get those things done, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't about, I'm going to do everything. It's hard for me to sit back and say, I'm going to do everything on my own. So I choose not to do certain things intentionally as best as I can, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to accomplish those things. And while I sometimes want to apologize for not getting something on time, I tend not to, because that's as much as I've managed my energy for the day. Because time is a finite factor, but I can definitely manage my energy, and as much as I can, so that I can conserve myself for whatever that week brings. I'll do what it takes. So I carefully craft what's important on my agenda to sort of move forward, because it's kind of that old adage, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. And my
Hmm.
job is inspiring people. So if I can't inspire, then I probably am not good enough for what they do. So that was a big mindset. It's kind of like from executing to empowering.
I think that is probably one of the biggest life lessons that everyone needs to learn. And I'm a New Yorker by birth. I still live in New York right now. And that hustle culture and the go, 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 and more is really deeply ingrained in a lot of us.
Right.
And at a certain point, you wake up and you realize, I can't do everything. And I
Sure.
can't do everything right now. And I can't do everything excellent right now. And I think it's really probably really empowering for your associates to see you also embodying that, because then that takes the onus off of them to do the same thing for themselves.
True. Very well said.
Yeah. Um, One thing that I think is pretty unique to Cote is that there is a lot of decades long tenure at the organization. And obviously, the organization itself is quite old with this 100-year history. I heard that a wrangler at Tenke Verde Ranch, which is one of your properties, has been with the company for 47 years, which is just incredible. And
Amazing.
obviously, with what you were talking about with the mentorship program, I could see how that can start to spur things. But this is something that's been going on for a while. So, what do you think is the secret to building that type of loyalty with associates?
Yeah, it's just amazing when I walk around, and I do a lot of that in terms of connecting with people, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like the reason a lot of folks have been loyal to our organization over the years is and it starts with respect, right? It's respect that somebody is an expert in their field, and give them the opportunity to do what they're supposed to be doing. So,
Yeah.
so that respect and that autonomy, I think, is a big deal. Then also we've demonstrated that we value people, and through recognition and through rewards, and then creating these growth paths where you can stay on the same track, or you have the opportunity to expand your brand and explore other avenues, like this program guide is set to do. But I think, again, the word authenticity is overplayed, but I don't know if there's a better word than that when I talk about our culture. And when you think about who we are as an organization, and we talk about enriching lives and making people feel differently, that to me is authenticity in our culture of what we call Code Cares. So people stay for truly for love and not necessarily perks. That can be said for most of them. I think as we've given them the opportunity to be the best version of themselves, and I think what Code family companies and now Cote Hospitality has done over the years is really making it all about them, and them being whether it's our guests or our associates, it's how we've helped them, feel special about themselves, and created that stickiness or loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned Tenke Verde Ranch, which is in Arizona. You also have Grandview Lodge Spa and Golf Resort in Minnesota.
Mhm.
And you have two camps, Camp Lincoln and Camp Lake Hubert, which are brother sister camps for children in Minnesota. So, can you tell us a bit about each of the properties and how you think
Sure.
about them individually?
Of course. And they're all three very special assets, right? And
Yeah.
uh, it's interesting because you could book a summer and a winter vacation at the same time, and
Mm.
it would be that seamless. But really, what we've tried to do is try to ensure that each property maintains its unique identity and staying true to the overarching promise of delivering exceptional experiences. And so what we've done is we've thought about our offerings, fostering adventure, relaxation, and meaningful connections.
Mhm.
And we focus on five different concepts. It's the adventure side of things, it's the culinary journeys, it's wellness incorporated, and then community, which means that we want to be the best community citizens. And then lastly, really built around celebration. So in Minnesota, it's a year-round resort, even though you would never think about it being in the frozen tundra. It is. It's very, very special with world-class amenities. It has this feel of heartfelt Minnesota hospitality, and what we try to do is blend in the award-winning golf tour courses, a beautiful spa which feels like a sanctuary because it's also slightly isolated from the main buildings, and then the beauty of Grandview is that we tailor make experiences that celebrate different aspects of life that you want, right? Taika Verde, on the other hand, is very different. It's very authentically Southwestern,
Mm.
and yet you can find luxury comfort when it's really on the outskirts of the Sonoran Desert, which is just actually fantastic. Looking at all these cacti trees, but yet you can see people horseback riding. They're taking in a little bit of wellness and a few of the bespoke activities that enable them to get a feel for that heritage of America West and truly the ultimate dude ranch. In terms of the camps, right? I mean, it's fascinating. This is my first foray into outdoor hospitality, and what we've been doing for generations here is developing, confident, independent, connected youth. And we think about the programming. What does that mean? How do we get them in a place mentally, physically, and emotionally that they can take on life in a different way? And so, what we do is we think about our programming that enables us to change, to give them a change in life and to sort of give them a safe, inspiring environment that's deeply rooted in tradition and adventure. So when they come there, they leave as the best version of themselves. And so they're all three very unique experiences. And of course, the boys, the camps have Camp Lincoln, which is for the boys, and Camp Lake Hubert, which is for the girls. And both of them have a very, very strong reputation in the marketplace. And we really enjoyed, seeing these kids grow and having, addressing maybe one of the biggest dilemmas we have in our country today, which is really about the mental space that kids are in today. So if we can play a small part in that, then we've done our job there.
Keeping up with online reviews across platforms is tough, but FeedCheck makes it easier by bringing all reviews from all channels into one place. In addition to tracking your own feedback, you can even monitor competitors to see how you compare. They provide deep insights into customer sentiment, trending topics, common issues, and patterns that might otherwise be overlooked. Plus, real-time alerts mean you can respond quickly before things escalate, and AI-powered suggestions help you craft better responses. So, if you want to stay ahead of your reputation, book a demo with FeedCheck at feedcheck.co/sweetsuccess or through the link in the podcast notes. It's almost a macrocosm of what you're doing with the mentorship program. Like if we could empower children to feel that confidence, that sense of adventure, leaving the best versions of ourselves, the work we're doing with mentorship programs by the time we become professionals might even be easier
Sure,
because we're not
absolutely.
undoing a lot of the screen time or the things that happened in childhood if we didn't have a fantastic summer experience that I
Absolutely.
know will be something people will think about and talk about for forever and build relationships there that will last a really long time, I imagine.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've seen that. In fact, our new vice president of marketing coming in, she starts in a couple of weeks. She actually was a camper who actually met her husband, who was also a camper.
That's
So
amazing.
imagine the stories we are about to launch into with her. So we're really excited about that.
I'm sorry, AI would have no gotcha questions for her. She
No,
sounds like the perfect fit for you guys. Um,
absolutely.
and speaking of the company, what's next? What's in the future plans for Cote?
For us, as we've sort of rebranded ourselves to be that hospitality brand, Cote Hospitality. What we want to do is our strategic growth really is built on finding the right assets or the right partners to form a venture with, right? So
Mhm.
the strategic growth really thinks about expanding thoughtfully with purpose and people at the center of it. And when I say people, it also includes our associates and guests. And so we want to expand into other communities that give our guests more options. And so we've talked about different parts of the country, whether it's Colorado or Florida or the Carolinas. And so that's kind of the next step for us. We'll be looking at either acquisitions or joining, in terms of managing properties or creating joint ventures to sort of launch into. But I think for us, just kind of expanding in an organic manner
Mhm.
is really critical versus just jumping in and taking up any asset and then figuring out how to do it. So I'll be very diligent and thoughtful in as we do our search and explore and expand as we move forward. But definitely keeping people and purpose at the center of everything.
That's amazing. Sounds like some really exciting things coming up for the next 100 years to keep the
Sure.
company busy. Agnello, I want to ask you the last three questions that I ask every guest. And this first one, you touched on it a bit when you talked about the Maya Angelou quote, but what was the best hospitality experience you've ever had?
It's always a fascinating question, right? Because the answer is different every time. But as I thought about, today, I think it was for me the one that's most memorable, at top of mind is I was with my family and we were traveling to Europe, and we ended up in Turkey and in Istanbul, and we weren't sure because usually, when we travel internationally, we try to figure out an American brand that we want to associate with, and
Right.
that we feel a little bit more of a sense of comfort. But I think in this particular case, I know in this particular case it was a small boutique family-run company, and we had arrived late, and there was all kinds of delays as we kind of went through, and we arrived after this long, exhausting trip, and as we walked through the door, the owner's son, I think he was probably in his late teens and also probably going to school or college, and we checked in, and he walks right up to us and says, "Follow me this way. I'm so glad you're here. I'm sorry you had all these trials and tribulations as you were traveling." But then he said, "Please sit down." And then all of a sudden, out comes a little fruit platter with some warm drinks because it was cold in Istanbul at that time. And he said, "Let me take care of your paperwork, and let me take care of you first, and then we'll take care of your paperwork." And he saw that my two daughters, who were in their early teens, were probably fatigued from there, and he said, "We'll take care of the paperwork later. Just took an imprint of my credit card, gave me the keys, and he walked me to the room." Now this is the owner's son,
Yeah.
and what he did on Katie was that he just didn't check us in. he checked in on us as people. And
Mm.
that one single moment, there was no technology involved. There was no elaborate gestures involved. It made us feel like family. And at that point in time, and in some cases, you still feel a sense of discomfort, although you want to explore the beauty and the history of the country. You do it with a little bit of trepidation, but for that one moment, it took away all those apprehensions, and it kind of brought me to that realization that hospitality at the very core is really about the human connection and not perfection, right? It's about being seen when you need it the most, and that's exactly what this gentleman Amir did for us. And I'll never forget that as one of my most memorable experiences.
It's a beautiful story and a great example of it doesn't have to cost money either. It wasn't, like you said, the lavish expenses. It was just someone making you feel really comfortable when you needed
Right.
it. On the flip side of the incredible Amir, what was the worst hospitality experience you've ever had?
Wow, that
Don't
just
have to name
happened.
names.
Yeah, well, that just happened this past weekend because that's at the top of my mind. I was flying back from San Jose, and uh, we take off, and a flock of birds go right into the jet's engine, and I'm sitting on the side of the jet that I heard this thud noise, and then I look outside, and there's stuff flying all over. So and the pilot, as he was very aware and made the right choice, said, "We just got hit by a flock of birds. I'm gonna land the plane because I just don't want to take any chances."
Yeah.
So we land, and everybody's at this frenzy, right, of trying to rebook themselves, and so was I, trying to get back on a Friday, which is not the smartest thing to do. And then I said, instead of taking the normal route of using the chat, which is highly impersonal, talking to somebody on the phone, you don't have that sense of empathy, or you don't see the tiredness in my eyes or the desire
Right.
to get home. So I decided to walk up to the customer service desk, and I said, I approached the lady, and she sees me, and she's on her computer, head down, not even putting her head up. She sees me through the corner of her eye,
Yeah.
and she keeps punching away. And I'm like, okay, this is all right. And so I waited, and I'm not joking. I usually, when I start getting annoyed, I start timing things. So here I am, 12 minutes into the conversation, and she's got a earpiece on, and she's talking to somebody, and she's typing away. And finally, as I made my way, and I said, I'm going to be patient because I don't want to make her mad, and I'll never get out of here. I was stuck in LA, which is my former home. And, when I got up to her, I said, good afternoon. I said, and I sensed that she was having a rough day. So I said, how are you doing today? And she's like, I could be better. Now this is customer service. And then from there, it all went downhill to telling me that it is not. I said, what are my options? That's all I said. What are my options? She's like, we are not getting a free room. You're not getting free meal vouchers. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't even ask that. I'm asking you, what are my options? Right.
As if
And
that's what you wanted. You wanted the plane to hit the bird so that you could get a free bad room at an airport hotel.
Exactly. And in a place in LA where I could have called on a multitude of my friends to have a drink, dinner, whatever the case may have been, I was like, okay, I'm going to choose the 8 hours to just sit there and catch up on work and write a few things that were on my mind in terms of a blog and stuff like that, and prep for for the upcoming week. But it was just that moment where I didn't even I could have chosen one of the two ways, right? And is to say, I'm going to get mad at you, and I'm going to tell you what's on my mind, and I'm your customer. I decided to walk away, and I said, you know what? I noticed a badge. I took down the name, and right then and there, I said, do I plaster this over social media, or do I write to their customer service and see if they respond? I wrote to their customer service. It's been 3 days since I've been back, and I haven't even heard, hey, we apologize. So to me, those are the experiences that actually kill your brand. When you think of what that looks like, your brand is really what do you tell people you're all about, and if you can't keep that promise, then that lack of empathy, or that she missed that emotional connection, and what an opportunity for her to gain somebody's loyalty at a whole, different level. Experience is the brand, and so if they can't teach their people that, then it's kind of a shame. But I guess I'll have to stay for my miles for at this point and hope that they respond.
And unfortunately, I feel like that's what they're relying on when what you said in the beginning with the story about Amir in Istanbul, he spent no money to be kind, right? And if that woman had just said to you, gosh, like that must have been a bit scary on the plane. How are you doing? You're doing all right? Like you could have had a completely different conversation with her. And the email that you wrote to customer service, which may or may not be acknowledged, might have said, hey, it was a really bad experience, but this person really made the day better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And final question for you. What does hospitality mean to you? And is there anyone, it can be a person, it can be a brand that you feel has truly mastered it?
I mean, gosh, for me, hospitality just boils down to Maya Angelou's quote, right? Is how you make people feel.
Yeah.
If you can understand empathy, if you can understand, that everybody has something going on in their lives, right? And regardless, you don't have to get involved in the personal details of it. But if you can do anything small, just to, put a smile on their face, to somehow make a connection, engage in some of the things that they may or may not want to share. But at the end of the day, if you thrive on this concept, let me make your day today or make somebody's day, then I think, I think you've got it made. Hospitality is not, they say it's not rocket science. I've heard this many times, some experts say, yeah, it's not rocket science, Agnelo. Anybody can do it. Yes, you can. And they usually compare it to neurosurgery, brain surgery, or rocket science. And my retort to that is, there's a difference. In rocket science, you're dealing with machinery, right? And of course, you're dealing with 3 or 4 people's lives that are extremely bright, but you're still dealing with a lot of machinery and technology. If you're doing brain surgery, the person is, under anesthesia. They don't know what's going on. Hopefully, you are capable and competent enough to do your job. But in hospitality, you are dealing with people who have all their sensories at full tilt. If you think about it, I'm not in coma, or I'm not under anesthesia. I'm not a machine. I'm a human being who has a heart and a mind, and I can define you as a brand down the road. And so if people keep that in mind, and just at the end of the day, right, think about this concept of enriching lives. What can I do to make it different for you today in a good way? And for me, that's really at the core of how I try to, start my day with gratitude and positivity, and figuring out that if I can keep those 2 concepts in mind, then the rest of it will take care of itself.
Yeah.
So.
And anyone that you think has mastered it, any people or brands that you look to and say, this is the antithesis of that airline experience that you had?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I think about people, it's unfair to just call out any brand because there are so many and they stand for different things. So I'll sort of defer to people. And for me, the 2 big heroes in my life, and who I've mentored, and of course never met them in person, is Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa. And Mahatma Gandhi was really about resilience, right? And so we as an industry have been labeled as a resilient industry because of our people. And he showed us that we can change the world without driving things in a ways that is destructive or demeaning or disrespectful. And Mother Teresa, I love her quote that says, if you judge people, you do not have time to love them. And so, I try to start my approach by saying, I don't know enough about such and such situation or such and such person. So let me figure it out for myself. It's interesting when I do onboardings, especially with new organizations. It's like, well, Agnelo's like this and Katie's like that. And I just turn a deaf ear to them, because I'm going to form my own perspective based on your actions, your behaviors, and your past success may be something that I consider, but it's really about what do you want to be in the future, and what your perspective is as you sort of move forward is what really inspires me to stay connected with. So I would say those two folks have really changed my perspective and in many ways my life.
Yeah, that is so beautifully said. Agnelo, it's been such a pleasure to spend some time with you today. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Katie, it's such a pleasure. And again, congrats on all your success. And thank you for having me. And it's been an honor.
All right, everyone. It's time for today's sweet summary, where I break down the key insights and actionable takeaways from today's conversation. Chatting with Agnelo felt like a masterclass in human connection. At the helm of a 100-year-old company, it's clear he's leaning into innovation, technology, and strategic growth, future-proofing the business for what's next. But at the same time, the insights he kept returning to felt as true today as they were a century ago. People don't crave transactions, they crave genuine enrichment. I find it fascinating that Cote operates 2 beloved summer camps, because if anything defines enrichment, it's creating lifelong memories during adolescence. As Agnelo explained, the camps are focused on nurturing confident, independent youth who leave each summer the best possible versions of themselves, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And that commitment doesn't stop with their campers. Through the company's mentorship program, they're also investing in their younger associates, helping them refine their personal brands, stripping away that fear of failure that holds so many of us back, and checking in on them not just as employees, but as human beings, just as Amir had done for Agnelo and his family during their trip to Istanbul. Agnelo reminds us that everyone has something going on in their personal lives. And that's a lesson that resonates deeply with me. My mother once told me a story about a call she made to the bank. The associate was horribly rude to her. And when my mother had finally had enough, she told the employee so and hung up. Minutes later, her phone rang. It was the same bank employee, but now she was in tears, apologizing for speaking to my mother that way, while explaining that her husband had just been diagnosed with cancer. Everyone's fighting a battle we can't see. That's why Agnelo's call for empathy, practicing it, building it, and leading with it feels more essential to hospitality today than ever before. But empathy isn't a carte blanche permission slip for poor behavior. While we can and should have compassion for what someone else might be going through, it's still on each of us to uphold a standard of mutual respect, something the airline associate Agnelo mentioned certainly did not do. Our guests can and will define our brands in the future. So what is it that we want them to say? And are we acting accordingly? In the end, hospitality is all about authenticity. It's a thread that has bound people together for more than 100 years and will continue to weave its magic in the future. And that concludes another episode of Sweet Success. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. We all know how important those 5-star reviews are. I also want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. It means the absolute world to me. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future guests, new topics to cover, or even just want to say hi, don't be shy. Message me through our website, sweetsuccesspodcast.com, or on social media @sweetsuccesspodcast. That's sweet like hotel suite. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Cline, and I'm super excited to see you all next week.